Namaste, Gordon, which are facetious and the other. Hare Krishna. We'll open the book on the page, whatever Krishna's arranged. In the Bhagavad Gita, so we'll read this verse. Om Ajnana Timinandasya Nanandana Shavaka Chakshuram Mritam Tasmai Shri Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sampitanye Swayam Bhagadamayam Vidadi Sadhu Vandeham Shri Shri Yuddhapadakamalam Shri Vishnascha Shri Rupam Savajatam Sahaganarayanam Idam Tam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Radha Krishna Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagadguru Govisha Gopika Radha Taptikanchana Range Madhe Vindameshwari Vishapanu Sadete Namami Hare Ramsarvataruvyasya Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. If you have your Bhagavad Gitas, you might like to turn the page open to, let's see, each one of these two verses. They're both very nice, actually. Let's read both 34 and 35 of chapter 3. If you have your bag. How many of you have got your Bhagavad Gitas with you? Hands up.
Two of them on the phone.
On the phone.
Is that the same? Two of them.
And you've actually got a Bhagavad Gita, as it is, on the book form. Anyone has a book? No one has a book. Amazing.
It's in home.
Oh, it's in home. There's one in London also. I saw one in London. Bombay maybe. No, you don't need to get it. I'm just inquiring for the sake of it. I traveled one time, I think on an airplane actually, and Srila Prabhupada was talking. He said, "Where's that verse? Where is that verse? Bring the Bhagavad Gita." I asked his servant. He didn't have one. He said, "Well, you haven't got one. Bhagavad Gita should always have." Just like the Christians, they generally carry their Bhagavad Gitas, their Bibles. Same principle as they're saying. Those who are serious, they carry them around. Whenever necessary, if there's spare time they read, or if there's something they need to quote, they quote. The Prophet used that as a good example that we should also, with Bhagavad Gita. You can get these little teeny ones. I don't know, you have them here, they're small. They're like this, there's one black one there. Some of them are white or different. Doesn't matter the colour. Same thing inside, black or white. No discrimination here. So inside the topics are the same. One thing means Krishna giving his will, leaving his will. We can say when the person, in the case of Krishna, he never really leaves, but nonetheless we can say, he was here at a certain time, and he moved to another place, so to speak. Well, we also come and go all the time, we're coming and going. Krishna himself says, many births I and you have had, I can remember all of them, you cannot. Because Krishna is unborn, he's not actually born physically speaking, but he appears, he's prakrit and apakat, he manifests and unmanifested. So we call that the birth and death, but in Krishna's case it's not. He just appears, his will, and when he feels, when the time is right, he becomes unmanifested. So similarly, a man may sometimes leave a will, or a woman or anybody, before they depart, they write one will, and you're supposed to follow the will. I think legally speaking, that's how it works. And maybe he did so much this, that, the other, what's happening to his estate, and so on, who pays the bills, whatever it may be. But in Krishna's case, he also has left a will. This is like his will. Bhagavad Gita is like Krishna's will. So Krishna conscious means learning how we can act according to Krishna's will. Bhagavad Gita is the guidebook. It is like a written guidebook of how we can learn to live our lives according to the will of Krishna. It doesn't mean you give up your life. It means we learn to live our life according to the will of Krishna. Surrender, sacrifice, so many things. It's simple. It simply means instead of doing things for our own selfish purpose, we learn to do it for Krishna. That's called surrender. It's not so difficult. You may not want to, that's another thing. But the practice is not actually so complicated. Of course, there are many challenges on the path, we can say, or we may call them whatever we wish, different challenges or obstacles, whatever you wish to call them. But in principle, it's not so difficult. Let's see what it says here. This is text 34. Indriyasyendriyasyarte ragadvesho vyavastitao tayona vasham agaschet todasya paripantino. This is a nice word, paripantino. It means stumbling blocks. Stumbling blocks. Paripantino. Todasya paripantino. There are principles. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion. Raga, dvesha, yuvastito. Raga is the attachment and dvesha is the aversion, or likes and dislikes, hatred and liking, like this duality. So there are principles to regulate these things. You can't stop it exactly like that, but to regulate it. Those pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Not just attachment, but aversion. Both. This also refers to, for instance, the general three categories of paths that people follow. The Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Upasana Kanda. Taking Upasana Kanda may also be within the bracket of Bhakti, devotional worship. So take those three paths, and one sees the different, they may be doing the same thing, but their purpose or their understanding is different. The Karma Kanda path is usually one of attachment, performing various kinds of activities to try to improve one's material situation, to get an elevation to the higher planets, or a better life in this world, bodily, material results. And on the Jnana Kanda path, so they accept attachment. The Jnana Kanda rejects it. It rejects material attachment, up to the point where, of course, the philosophy of nihilistic philosophy of everything's an illusion. The material world is an illusion. Nothing really exists. So they kind of reject it altogether, negative. They realize that material life is say, false in the sense it's not our real business. You don't really belong here, and there's no real benefit from spending all one's energy trying to make the material world to our satisfaction. So they reject the material world entirely. So one accepts it as basically all in all, and the other rejects it entirely, or a mixture of the two. But the devotee is not one or the other. Krishna is not advising us to be neither one or the other. Unfortunately, we also sometimes, as aspiring devotees, we're also busy trying to use Krishna consciousness to try to adjust the material world so that it just fits what we would like it to be, as much as possible. So we also get entangled in this sense, and we encompass sometimes unnecessary stumbling blocks. Nātupasamam Shakshat Bhakti Yoga Bhokshija and Sudha Goswami. Sudha Goswami states that the material miseries of this world, which are superfluous to the soul, nothing to do with the soul, can be mitigated immediately by the linking process of devotional service. So what is that linking process of devotional service? It is this simple process. We don't accept or reject this material world as such. We act according to Krishna's direction. In the Bhagavad Gita was that verse, 6th chapter, verse 1. That verse goes, step on memory. It's a very important guideline for us. Anashta kamapalam karyam karam karoti susamyasi chiyoyicha nanyavarnir chakriyavam. That we should perform our duty. One who is unattached to the fruits of his work, and who works as he is obligated, is in the renounced order. He is the true mystic, not one who does nothing. The devotee acts, but he acts without attachment to the result, in one sense. Now, that's also interesting, because if you have no attachment to the result, you may not be particularly concerned about, trying to do a good job or succeeding. But a devotee does, but being not attached to results means not for himself. He wants the result for Krishna. That's the detachment for the devotee. He works in this world, but not for himself. He's not attached to it for himself, and he doesn't reject it because he knows it's not his, or it's not ours. How can you renounce something which is not yours? This is the actual consciousness. Some people think we have to renounce this world. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all, because it's not yours to renounce. But when Bali Maharaj was, you know some of you, the story of Bali Maharaj, when he surrendered when he thought he was like the proprietor of the universe almost, when he surrendered everything to the Lord, there was still a little element there of pride. He was thinking, I've given everything. But when his wife Indyavali came upon the scene, you can imagine how she felt. Imagine if some of you ladies are married. Imagine if you came out back home, maybe you've been out with a baby in the pram somewhere or something. You come back home and you find out your husband has given everything away. Absolutely everything, including all your clothes, your shoes, your makeup, everything. And the pram, by the way. Maybe the baby also, I don't know. Everything given away without even consulting you. How would you feel? Would you feel happy? Everything, absolutely everything, even his own body. How would you feel? No? Can't imagine. Some people are not married, of course. And I'm sure you can understand. So she got a little angry with her husband in a sense. You can imagine how she felt. She said, "You agnostic fool." Even now you're still behaving like an agnostic fool. And you think you've done, such great service by giving everything to the Lord, but still you have not realized that it was never yours in the first place. And now you're proud of giving it. So she got on his case, telling him he was still in ignorance, even though he just surrendered the universe to Guru Brahma. Prabhupada says she was far more advanced than Bali Maharaj in spiritual life. Because she realized that nothing belonged to anybody in this. Everything belonged to him already. What is this idea of giving it? So she's a surrender. There's a difference between one who surrenders everything and one who's a surrendered soul. The two items are mentioned, nectar devotion. Bali Maharaj fits one, in Jalali the other. I'm not said both very elevated. And of course, Bali Maharaj is a Mahajan, so he was playing a part, teaching us the higher principle of surrender or renunciation or whatever you want to call it. That understand everything belongs to Krishna and everything should be used in Krishna's service. That's all. Our body, our mind, everything. Our senses, our wealth, our family, everything ultimately, we may be the protector for the time being. We're responsible. But ultimately it all belongs to Krishna, all came from him. Everything is his energy. Everything comes from him. How we use it, we have a little free will. That's where our free will comes in. We can choose to see it as mine or ours or whatever. Or we can see it as belonging to Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita is to teach us to see how everything is related to Krishna. The job which you do, the studies you're doing, the family which you have, the body which we have, everything. Of course, we can also see our problems related to Krishna. We don't blame Krishna for them, but we can see them in relationship with Krishna. The obstacles in relationship with Krishna. Everything has its relationship with Krishna, directly and indirectly. Prabhupada writes in the purport, those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. It's not artificial. Some people make an artificial attempt to restrain their senses early on, or maybe later on, I think it is. Indriya Sindriyasyate. That's the verse we're on now. But later on there's another verse which describes those who restrain themselves from sense objects, but whose mind dwells on material sense gratification, simply delude themselves, and what we call fools or pretenders. It's not a question of just artificially restraining ourselves, a question of learning how to engage ourselves in a positive way. Krishna consciousness is primarily positive. Ultimately, it's absolutely positive. But even our stage is primarily positive in learning how to recognize what we've been given and how that can be best be utilized for our own benefit also. You may say, oh, for Krishna's pleasure, but it's really also for our pleasure. If you use it for sense gratification, you see, in the sense of the wise person, the intelligent person, he's not interested in sense gratification because he knows that sense gratification, material sense gratification that is the source of suffering. It has a beginning and end, is the cause of suffering. Most people are so busy trying to enjoy their senses, they don't realize that that's like drinking poison, basically. They're just causing their own distress in the future. You don't realize that what we're suffering from now is a result of our past endeavors to enjoy our senses. And if we're still continuing to do that, then we're just perpetuating the same process. In the name of satisfying our senses, we're actually disturbing our senses and causing ourselves more disturbance in the future. That's all. People don't realize that. They don't want to sometimes. Atheistic or whatever. But the wise person, he's not interested in sense gratification like this. And he doesn't just restrain himself from sense gratification, however, that doesn't work very well either. That's a very difficult path. but rather he learns how to engage his senses, or engage one's senses in a positive way, connecting them with Krishna, according to the will of Krishna. And that way, one becomes freed. One becomes free. There are regulated principles. There are principles to regulate this. And this is actually the path to freedom. Prasadam, the verse has that go, prasadam and digachyati. That was the verse I was trying to remember. I can't remember where it is. So then Prabhupada goes on to mention, unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. The one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by sense objects. This is because this is Krishna's path. Everything is Krishna's path in one sense. Just like in Sydney, everything you can say is under the government, officially speaking, including the roads, the hospitals, the schools, the prison houses, and so on and so forth. So in one sense, everyone is under the government, but some people, of course, choose not to follow the will of the government exactly, so they end up in another aspect of the government's property, a prison or something like that, hospital or something. So similarly, although we may say, well, if everything's Krishna's path is all one, it's not exactly like that. Just like you can say everything is the government's, therefore everything is one, so it doesn't matter what you do, you're still under the government. There's a vast difference between a citizen who acts according to the direction of the government and one who acts against the government. So in this material, basically, to some degree, we're not following or abiding by Krishna's will. So Krishna provides us this material world in which we reside, where we forget about Krishna, and we try to get on with our own business of seeing ourselves in the center and trying to enjoy our senses. But without Krishna providing this world, we have no means of trying to satisfy our senses, no means of trying to enjoy in any way whatsoever. He provides all the means, just like a parent provides the means for the child. The child has no independent ability he wants this toy and that toy, but those who have children, some of you may have children, you know what it's like. You have a little son, he sees something in the window or something, Daddy, Daddy, I want that, but he can't get it. Unless Daddy buys it, right? Isn't it? Yeah. And he pesters you so much that eventually, all right, now Daddy goes in and buys in that toy or whatever it is. Well, maybe you don't, but most people do. And nowadays, not even interested in toys, they're interested in the latest mobile phone or laptop computer or something even more sophisticated. Daddy, Daddy, I want that latest, Mac top, whatever it's called. The latest multi-purpose mobile or $2,000 mobile or something. Kids walking around with it. And but he can't provide himself, got no means. But then he has it. So this material is like that. We're like kids. All right, you want it, here you go. So for a little while, Krishna gives us this material until we get fed up with it. Unfortunately, we usually we're kind of stupid, although we have a bad experience or realizations, and we'll still go back to the same thing again often. But when we finally learn our lesson, all right, then come back. And you don't need the material world anymore. When we grow up, when a person grows up, generally speaking, they don't play around with toy soldiers and what else children play with. But of course, nowadays, children are playing with computers, so I guess none of us really grow up. They're just like sophisticated toys. But the adults also have all their toys to play with. And but when we really wake up and we realize that we don't belong here, so it's not our business to try to enjoy sense gratification. For example, sex enjoyment is necessary for the conditioned soul. Sex enjoyment is necessary, practically speaking. And sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage rights or marriage ties. According to scripture and injunction, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. So this is one example, a primary example, of how we regulate our desires or sense and attachments. Sex is only for within relationship with one's own wife. All other women, this is for men. The scriptures are supposed to be primarily to give the men are supposed to take responsibility to see that religious principles are upheld. So it's directed towards them. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. This is the way that this tendency is supposed to be regulated. But in spite of such injunction, the man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise there will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. So they're allowed under rules and regulations, but we shouldn't also become over-dependent. In other words, that as if that is the all in all, and now that's all we have to do. And successful. The rules and regulations are meant, just like our Varnashram system, ultimately it is meant to free us from attachments in this world and to bring us to becoming attached to Krishna. It's not just to make material life comfortable. The rules and regulations and guidelines are not just so we become free of karma, live a better life in this world, happier life in this world, and so on. That may be there, but that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is that we gradually become purified, freed of this attachment to self, material, sense gratification. That's the point. And attached to Krishna. The sense enjoyment, this is a nice thing. One has to follow those rules and regulations, but not attached to them. Sometimes in Veda Bhagavatas, they become very attached to the rules and regulations. And that's like the all in all. They never go beyond it. Stay in this material world. Very, you could say pious following. But that's not the goal either. That's still material. Just regulation is not the goal. That's just to help us to come to realization. Because practice of sense gratification under regulation may also lead, of course there's always danger, it may also lead one to go astray. You can't just kind of guarantee you can just stay regulated. As much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. There's an accident on the royal roads, there's chances there. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee there will be no danger, even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very, very long time owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. So although it's there as a beginning stage, as a good start, ultimately we should not be attached to that either. Attachment, what should we be attached to? What should prasangam ajaram. We should become attached. Attachment to Krishna consciousness, or acting always in the loving service of Krishna, detaches one automatically from all kinds of sensory activities. So not just a question of becoming detached, but becoming attached to devotional service, that automatically releases one from the attachment to sense enjoyment. You don't have to worry separately about it. It's a byproduct. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. So we have time for some questions or comments. We won't have time to read the next verse, but I do recommend you read these, especially chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. It's a very relevant chapter for everybody, and especially those who are working in this world. We have to associate with this world regularly in terms of working with people who identify with this world, having to raise families, which is a great challenge, and so on. This chapter is a very great source of inspiration and strength and guidance. So, any questions, please? Anything, not necessarily on this, anything which you wish to discuss. Don't all ask at once, please. Loud and clear so we can all
Please explain
hear.
about some spiritual
You're a
plans.
ventriloquist. Oh, sorry. I was looking at you and I thought you were asking.
Maharaj, can you please explain about spiritual planets? You know
About
about spiritual planets.
Spiritual planets.
Yeah.
Do you want to know about the spiritual planets?
Yeah.
What are the spiritual planets?
Yes.
And anything else? No,
Um,
just the spiritual planets.
The second question is, if we go to the spiritual planets, for example, two devotees go to the spiritual planet, can they recognize each other?
Only 2 devotees go. What if 3 go? If 2 can't, then 3 definitely won't.
Some devotees, if they go, if they meet in Sydney, can they still recognize them?
They meet in Sydney, can they meet up there? Hare Krishna. Spiritual planet. Well, Krishna says there's no need of sunlight or moonlight or electricity in the spiritual world. They're self-important, they're eternal. Again, we try to see what the difficulty in these type of questions is. Not difficulty in one sense, but the difficulty is if we hardly have the capacity to comprehend the actual substance. Because we tend to see things in a kind of relative form, we try to measure things and try to adjust things like that. The fact of the matter is anything that you can measure is called material. Spiritual cannot be measured. And it doesn't have, like in this world, something is like so thick and so thin and so heavy and so whatever. You put all these... No, it's right with that. It's a very beautiful sound. I'm really enjoying it right now. Don't worry, there are no mobile phones in the spiritual world. What's the difference between the spiritual plans and the material plans? There are no mobile phones in church. No, they're devoid of all these images in the spiritual world. So you can't really measure it. Everything is pure from spirit, pure from man. But it also has form. Now when we use the word form, one tends to relate it to what we experience in this world. Thus people have a great difficulty with spiritual form. And many spiritual practitioners therefore conclude there is no such thing as spiritual form. Because form automatically, one sort of relates that to physical. But it's like, for instance, we got this body. Now, the understanding is that this body is shaped according to the shape of one's subtle body, which you cannot see. It's there. Or even the clothes that you wear are according to the shape of their physical body. The physical body according to the shape of the subtle body, and the subtle body according, of course, there's a lot more other factors, but in principle, according to the nature of the desire of the soul. So it's really resting in the soul. The form doesn't take shape without the soul. Everything remains in what's the unmanifested form of Mahatma. It's only when we go to the presence of soul that things actually come into shape, take form, even in the material world. But in the spiritual world also, form is there, but it's pure, Brahman. It's actually spiritual, unending, not conditioned. I mean, a number of different, word I don't know, kind of comparisons are unlimited, but still we can't really comprehend it because we have a Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita, Sevam we have material senses. The material senses, we're trying to perceive something which cannot be perceived with material senses exactly. We can have some kind of comprehension to a certain extent. We can't perceive it exactly with our present senses. It's not possible. Something should reveal it. When our senses become purified. So the spiritual nature is devoid of the effects of the modes of nature. There is no birth or death. There's no suffering, there's no anxiety, there's no envy, there's no greed, lust, etc., etc. You can go on and on and on. So you can make the spiritual world here right now in Sydney. You don't have to go up there to meet each other. You can meet each other right here in Sydney in the spiritual world. We just have to come to this platform where our senses, or our mind, our consciousness is pure. And then we can understand these things. As far as souls meeting each other up there, and whether we'll recognize each other up there, well, Prabhupada did say we'll have ISKCON also in the spiritual world. So, whatever that means. Because Prabhupada was just, in a sense, giving us something we should relate to whether or not we'll be able to recognize ourselves in that sense of the way we're talking about, because we don't even recognize each other now. We don't know who we are right now. We're looking at a physical body, and to some extent there's some understanding of a soul or a person within. But that's changing all the time. We don't even really understand. When we understand each other now, then that becomes an eternal relationship. But otherwise, the relationship, it's like a good example. There's a very interesting pastime in the Srimad Bhagavatam. King Chitraketu, whose son died, he was devastated. And when, after some time, Angara Muni, long story, but it's very short, and Narada Muni came on the scene, they tried to save him from his lamentation. He was very much lamenting the loss of his child. Because when we lose those who are very close to us, it is a very painful experience. We all know, we've all experienced it. And it's natural that one feels lamentation, even elevated souls, for some time. But even Arjuna was lamenting, specifically after his death of his son Abhimanyu. This is quite nothing, totally normal in this material world, but it should not be perpetuated. We should, again, come to our intelligent platform, the real platform. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clear platform. So Chitraketu was very overwhelmed, and there's good reasons why. But after a while, Angara Muni and Narada Muni came on the scene, and they actually preached him, but he still couldn't really get it because he was so attached. So he accepted it was true, but still he was overwhelmed. So then he said, okay, what do you want? What do you really want? I want my son back. All right, they brought his son back into the body. They have that power. So then the son came back to life again. And he started to speak, although he was a young baby, like a baby almost. Started to speak to the father. And the father was ecstatic. He started to, he went from very happy to have a child, and he had one child. And then he was devastated when he lost the child, and again he was overwhelmed, almost you could say ecstatic, and his child came back to life again. So then, my darling son, he was going. And the son said, who are you? He said, I'm your father. Which father? Which father? I'm your father. Which lifetime? I've had billions of fathers and mothers. In which lifetime were you my father and mother? He started to preach to him about the actual nature of the soul, the person, and not the body, not this temporary mind and body, which we consider me and you and everyone else. And when we actually do have some realization of who we are, then yes, so first we have to recognize who we are. Don't worry up there, you don't see your friend with his false teeth and glasses and grey hair and wrinkles. Some Christians, they portray this in heaven as if you're going to be there with your auntie and uncle and your dog and television set and everything else, the laptop and mobile, they're all up there. Same ones you had down here, they still don't work. Oh, the difference is they all work up there. There's no bill, you have to pay the bill. If you don't realize who you are here, the question doesn't really apply because you don't know who your friend is. You understand?
Yes.
You've got to realize the real nature of the identity of the self. When we realize that, you're already in the spiritual world anyway. So there's no material form, but the form is spiritual. When we realize our spiritual identity, takes time by using this material form according to the directions of Krishna, short-term environment. Gradually that realization can come. The same in the spiritual planet. You'll realize that this is the spiritual planet right now. But it's because our consciousness is covered, we're seeing it differently. It's just the nature of Maya. We see things in relationship to ourselves, and we measure everything in relationship to ourselves. Everyone does that. The ant does it, the demigods do it, we do it, demons do it, everyone does it. We all come up with a different conclusion and fight over it. But none of us is right. We're all wrong, I should say, or incomplete perspective of things in this world. So this is the real solution. So that's your next question. To really understand it. So, the question. So the lady said, and we'll come back to that in a second.
How can we know if someone has worked out their karma and that they're Krishna conscious and will not be born again? Are there signs that can tell us that someone won't be born again?
Karma is an interesting thing because oftentimes we think of karma. It's a very, very intricate subject matter, of course. But sometimes we think of karma only in terms of physical reactions. I'm not saying you do, but most people do. You break a leg, you lose your money, or something bad, something like experience legal problems, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's my bad karma, when will I be free of my bad karma? But karma that's just a secondary thing actually. The actual karma is the thought patterns and the desires which we cultivate, which we have in our mind, and so on. That is also karma. And we don't necessarily think like that because we're still identifying ourselves with the mind, but it's actually a karmic reaction. All the desires and things that we experience in our mind is a karmic reaction. And there are tendencies going one step further. The Buddhists, they're also karmic reactions from our previous association, which formulates a particular tendency to see the world around us in a particular way. That's also karma. So when our tendencies start to change, and desires start to change away from the material world towards Krishna, then this is a sign that a person is becoming free of his karma. And he may still have a broken leg, and he may still be in debt, and he may be doing this and that, but that's not the real sign. You have no more problems with that. The real sign is you have no more desires for engaging in activities. Karma actually is defined as activity which causes the future development of material bodies. So when we have no more desire to engage in activities which will cause future development of material bodies, you are really becoming free of your karma. And because you're asking for some symptoms, and you're becoming more and more inclined, desires, let's say, for Krishna and or devotional service to Krishna, etc., are increasing. Then this is a sign that you're definitely becoming free. And there may be other signs too, but this is one sign which we can experience that a person is becoming free from karma. Now in the beginning, you may not be able to experience that. You have to finish now, or we start for 2 minutes? In the beginning, that may not be the case, because the first thing that will come up, usually is this. Just reminder. I'm working on that already. I'm already working on it. It's already on the menu. We've already started the first course. First course is conserved. So the amazing thing is, it's like all these things are held in stock. And generally we're not aware of that. There's a big stock of unmanifested reactions. Waiting in stock to fructify, to take seed. A big stock. So in devotional service, that big stock, when you start the path of devotional service, one of the first symptoms is you may see a large stock of karma coming up in your mind. And you think, this is terrible. Now I'm experiencing worse than I was before. Before it wasn't so bad. Now it's just like an avalanche, a tsunami. Sometimes, you say, oh, that may sometimes happen. It doesn't come in such a way you can't manage it, but it may sometimes appear like that sometimes. The thoughts you never realized. But they're in an unmanifested state within a subtle body, in mind, and yet to come to the surface. The program hasn't yet. Like a television program coming up, it's just about to begin or something. And you don't know what's coming next in the material world. You can't say. So for a devotee, most people who live out through lifetimes after lifetimes through different species of life, but when you take a devotional service, that's going to be cleared up in this very lifetime, and it's not going to be all that you have to do. There's a token reaction will come up, which is just the right amount of, let's say, challenges, adversities, and obstacles. Let's put it in the sense of challenges in our mind, and so on and so forth, which are just suitable to even the physical sufferings. Are just suitable for removing the tendencies which we have from a pure sense of enjoyment. The idea of this is not, to overwhelm us, but is to help us to become free of any tendency to want to exploit or enjoy this material world. And to bring us to the point where we realize that there's no other shelter or freedom from this world other than to take shelter of Krishna. So sometimes distressful conditions are very hard to bear, and we all probably have them. But if they help us to take, Queen Kunti was praying like this, and these difficulties happen again and again, because in these difficult situations, they have no recourse other than to take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. So that's the positive side of that. On the other side, when a devotee suffers, it said he is getting free of bad karma, and when you enjoy, you're getting free of the good karma. You also have to get, most people think of karma, they only think of the bad. We don't realize that good karma is just as entangling as bad. In fact, most people, they actually want good karma. They pray for good karma. And they become even more entangled in the material world than people who are on bad karma path. Both we have to get free of this. Both from your own path. Both have become transcendental for these. So when we're becoming more and more attached to Krishna and less inclined, the desires may be there, the challenges may be there in our minds, difficulties may be there externally, but we're less and less attached to them. We're not taking shelter of them or battling with them, trying to adjust them, trying to turn up the good ones and turn off the bad ones. Not fiddling around with the terrorism knobs anymore, but we're just depending upon Krishna. We're not trying to make our separate endeavor to enjoy. We're depending. When we become more and more dependent upon Krishna, it's a sign that we're becoming free. Even though it appears it's going on, it's still the old age and the disease and this and that. But it's just winding down. When we're no longer engaged in activities to cause more karma, more body, more material. What other symptoms can we say so we can see that we're becoming free of that karma? You already are by asking that question. That's a symptom that we make see. We're aware of it. Just being aware of it is a big beginning. Being aware of it. And when we make that change in our life, anything else?
You were saying that we should not come under control of attachment aversion.
Christians.
Sorry, Krishna's saying. So sometimes we see that just to somehow some pseudo way to maintain a Krishna consciousness, we try to use some avoidance techniques. But how do we see to it that this avoidance is not taking over our actions? like we not just have people with avoiding this.
Avoidance.
Yeah.
Let's see if I got this right. Avoidance techniques to avoid what?
So let's say, let's say if you're Prabhu and you're trying to avoid, political association marketing,
Okay.
something like that.
To use some techniques. Well, there's only one real technique, and it must be ultimately successful technique. Maybe in some situations you have to, for instance, if you're married and you've still got an inclination for others' wives, which is a point mentioned here, then that was not the scenario we're referring to. Then some techniques may be required, but that may be, but ultimately that's only just to try to save a situation. Like Vasudeva employed a technique to save the wife of David, but then the cancer was trying to kill her. He did, it worked, but that doesn't look good. His philosophy was somehow save the situation right now so that we can get on with our real business of actually becoming Krishna conscious. It's only by becoming Krishna conscious when you get the actual higher taste. Ishayavani Vajapayana Ramyasadena Vasavajama Sophyasya Param Drishta. Only when you've got a higher taste, then we can become free of these tendencies for the tastes of this world. So we have to develop a higher taste, not just techniques to avoid the taste of this material world, so to speak. But they may be helpful at some stages. But we can't become attached to that. That's referring to this also, rules and regulations. We fall into the same category really in terms of artificial shelter or temporary shelter, mechanical shelter. So you can't depend on those things, and the danger is when they become over-dependent on techniques if we're not careful. It should be with good guidance and consultation, other more mature personality, Guru Shastra society like that. If you're going to employ these things or not. But the most important thing is to summon and ultimately take shelter of Krishna. And not employ the techniques given by Krishna and not temporary techniques that have like a painkiller effect. They may have a temporary benefit or need, but ultimately they don't cure the problem. Problems are cured by Krishna, really, Krishna consciousness itself. But that's the main thing, we have to try to cultivate. And good association, and chanting and hearing of Krishna, and so on and so on. That's the real solution. Which will free us from the attachment to the temporary things of this world. We can employ some yogis, for instance, to help them to restrain their sexual urges with locks and chains on certain parts of their body, so they cannot engage in such activity. Other people do even more radical things. But this doesn't mean to say that the desire is removed. It's the desire that has to be removed, not just the object. We take the verse recorded earlier on. The whole verse. But one who restrains himself from the sense objects, but whose mind dwells on them, and is sort of a fool and a pretender. So we don't want to be fools and pretenders. We've got to realize where we're at and know what to be done at that stage, and so we can become fit. So that there are techniques to control the urge or the desire and tendency, and that is the process of Krishna consciousness. Others may have other processes, but it's certainly included within the process of Krishna consciousness. How to control the mind, how to channel the mind positively, how to replace it with something more attractive. For example, she was given as a child playing with broken glass, how to. You don't just take the glass away, it won't work. You have to give the child something else, which the child will take and automatically drop the glass. So that must be not just a technique to drop the glass, but because you're conscious giving your child something else, because he may pick the glass up again. So there's something more tasty, more tasty. just techniques alone, it's not something more tasty. It may be helpful at the time being, but it's not the solution. It's got to be something more tasty. So the tendency for those things is reduced. Moving along, now we'd like to also mention that as we mentioned already, it is natural that we all face situations sometimes when we lose those who are very dear to us in our lives, be they friends, family members. We are an illusion, so we're not going to just talk beyond our capacity, so to speak. But so it's natural we're going to become affected by that. It will vary from person to person. It's just like Mother Ganga. Ganga's not here tonight. Is she here? Well, 3 days, actually at the program the other night, she just heard that her mother had passed away 3 days ago. And of course initially she felt, after a few minutes she was very happy because she realized that her mother was very lucky. Because she'd been worshipping Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath Balaram and Subhadra and Hare Krishna. And her body wasn't in good shape. She was suffering. So she lives very happy. When the soul passes on from this material body, it depends. If they're fortunate enough to have especially a relative, close relative who's inclined towards Krishna consciousness, they get the benefit there, tremendous benefit. So the best thing we can do when our relatives pass away, or anyone passes away, is to try to become Krishna conscious. Because that will be for their benefit. Especially if it's a parent, whatever it may be. He passes away. I know when my father passed away, it was interesting actually. I was out in New Zealand. And I decided I was going to go back to England for a week or two, right? And we had a reunion I was going to go to. So I just bought my ticket that day. In England, those days it wasn't on the internet. You could buy a ticket and go the next day. And the price was still the same. It's changed now. You buy 60 years in advance. He was dead by the time the flight goes. I hope you died before the flight and you don't have to see the But anyway, I bought this ticket and then the night before the flight I had a phone call. It was my brother on the phone. He'd been trying to get hold of me for 2 or 3 days, where it was. And he said, "Oh, Dad just passed away 3 days ago." So I said, "Well," he said, "You're in New Zealand, so obviously you can't come over. The funeral's in 2 days' time." So I said, "Well, amazing enough, I'm leaving for London tomorrow morning already. I have the ticket." So I went to the funeral, and he wasn't too as such. He never really had much interest in Krishna consciousness, but it was a good opportunity. We were able to put flowers and Chanamrita and so many different things at that moment to his coffin. And we're able to even take his ashes to the river Ganga. So he was very lucky in that sense. I was, not because of me really, but some others got that good fortune. So we can do the best we can. It's part of life. It's passing away. Everyone has experienced this. So we do the best we can. And in our good wishes, in our prayers, and our devotion, they get the benefit of that. We're indebted to them, to our parents. And certainly if they've in any way had any contact with Krishna consciousness, they get tremendous benefit from that. But even if they haven't had much, even if it's been negative, they still get tremendous benefit because naturally the son or daughter will be very much, attachment will be there, and natural good wishes will be there. And Krishna has to fulfill the good wishes of his devotees. He's obligated to Bhakti-Vatsa. So if the good wishes are there, then even though they may not be themselves advanced in spiritual life, they will become blessed and they will get very good. Either a very good birth, again, in a position to take up spiritual life, or they may even go back to God, depending on the situation. So in that sense, it can be a very positive thing, not simply, oh, such a lamentable situation only. It can be a very joyful occasion in one sense, as well as a lamentable one. Interesting mix. But we should all of us, our business is to think of the welfare of everyone, every living entity, everyone. And it's natural we should think of our parents and family members, pray for their welfare. They've done so much for us. We should be indebted. And the best way we can repay that debt is to help them to make spiritual advancement. Once they will affect their bodies, then we should be praying for their spiritual advancement and trying to advance ourselves, because our advancement they will automatically get benefited by. It states in the scriptures that depending on the level of devotion and advance we are, that the family members for 3, sometimes except 3, sometimes 7, sometimes 21, even up to 100 generations before and after are delivered in the material world. It depends on the potency of the devotee, the purity of the devotee. And we now consider ourselves as much as a devotee, but still there's some benefit of that. So we should continue to always think of the welfare of others, and not just act in the kind of material, lamentable way only. That won't help anyone. Doesn't benefit the soul, increases the attachment to the body plane, increases their entanglement in the world, and we want to help them to become attached to Krishna. If anyone has any more, I'll be here for a few more minutes, probably. Don't know for sure. Probably be here for a few more minutes at least. Krishna Guru. We'll come to all this one day. But let's prepare ourselves so that the time comes we're depending on Krishna. Is there anything personal which you want to mention? And any announcements from?
We're going to have prasadam now.
Oh,
Yeah, so if you can.
Prasadam
Outside.
Thank you all very much. Please try to understand that by following the Bhagavad Gita as much as you can, it is for our benefit and for the benefit of everyone else, including one's parents. They're not very mature spiritually inclined, they will get benefit if we're thinking of their welfare. Prahlad Maharaj prayed for his father around the Kashi, he pleased with everything. Such a sinful person. Because of the prayers of Prahlad around the Kashi, of course, a lot more to it. The Vishnu Deva was already delivered. In fact, all of the family members for many generations have been delivered. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. You're running off with the shot pretty quick, huh? You're having 100 already.